Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to Wood by Wright How To. Today we are going to be making a veneer press. And we're making a veneer press now because I'm actually going to be starting to make a clock. Well, to make a clock I need to make my own plywood. To make plywood I need to cut veneer, and then we need a veneer press to glue it all together. So today we are actually making the veneer press to make the plywood to make the clock. This is going to be fun. Here we go again. I'm going to start this off with some 2x4 oak, and this is actually 2x4. And I'm going to cut it to length. The length is, well, the press will be 1 foot by 2 foot, and so these boards have to be longer than the 2 foot section so that the threaded rod can go in there. So they were 2 foot 6 inches long, I believe, was what I was cutting them at. And then I actually want to flatten one side, and then on the other side I'm going to camber it slightly so that it puts more press. So you can see here I'm doing more on one end, and then I'm drawing it back and going longer and longer, and I'll do that on both sides until I get this camber on both. So there's about an 1/8 inch gap between the two cambered edges. Then I'm going to mark it so I know which edge is the cambered edge. And you might be able to see it here, there's just a bit of a bow from one end to the other on one edge. That way when I put those two bowed fronts together and I clamp them together, all the pressure will be in the middle, and then that will propagate out towards the outsides. This makes it a better clamp. Now I'm going to drill a hole through either end, and this will be what the threaded rods go through to clamp this into place. So I'll drill most of the way through until the tip comes out, and then turn around and drill from the other way so I don't have all that tear out. I'm just using regular threaded rod, and I'm doing that because I really like the fine pitch on this. It allows you to put a lot more force onto the bolt. Yes, it does mean you have to turn it more to get it down, but I'm more interested in the amount of torque that I can put down as the force. On one side, I'm going to put two nuts together and lock them together, and that way they hold into the place and don't slide out. And then I'll end up putting several other bolts on there. So here I'm just putting together to try it, and you can see the difference, how there's a gap from one end to the other because both boards are cambered. Now for the two plates that go in between that all of the pressing is done between, I'm using a couple sheets of 3/4 inch plywood. And when cutting plywood, you just have to treat it as the mindset of you are always cutting cross grain. So usually I'm going to be using a cross-cut saw no matter what I'm doing with plywood because I'm always cutting cross grain. And then I have a sheet of HDPE plastic. I can put this on the surfaces so that the epoxy, so that the glue does not adhere to the surface, makes it much easier to take off. So I'm just going to cut that down, and then I will have 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood with 1 sheet of HDPE high-density polyethylene, and I'll make 2 pairs of those. So yeah, it's a little bit of fun. Now the next thing I need to do is attach the HDPE to the block, and really there isn't a good way to glue this, so I'm going to screw it down with some brass screws. So pre-drilling and then countersinking the heads, and then we can put in the screw and they should go in nice and flush. Working with the HDPE is really nice. It's a very pleasant wood to work with. Put in the brass screws, and there you go. They don't have to be brass, but brass is really nice. Then after that we're actually going to plane it all down. Make sure it's nice and smooth, and HDPE curls are really enjoyable. There's no grain to them, so they come out perfect every time. So here you can see we have 2 layers of 3/4 inch plywood, then the HDPE on both sides. So in total, this is 1.5 inches, so it's 3 inches plus the HDPE, which is about 1/4 inch total. And that's basically the press. The 2 beams then push this whole contraption pile together. Now what I need to do is glue together the sheets so that I end up with the 2 sheets of 3/4 inch being solid and constant. So the press will be put to use in its first press. Put glue down, spread the glue around nice and clean all the way to the edges, and then we can glue this up. And so I'm just doing it in one big book match, putting both sheets of 3/4 inch together on both sides. Then these can slide apart, and you can see how the whole thing will then go together and put them all in place. Once those are all in place, then we can crank down the boards and glue it all down together. Yeah, here's doing the other side. And gluing together plywood is a lot of doing this, so get used to it. Spread the glue out, roll it in place, attach them together, and then we get to clamp them down. And originally I was planning on having 2 nuts on the other side, but then realized I really don't need 2 nuts on the other side. I only need them on the one side because the one side doesn't need a turn. But then I also noticed I'm having to hold it on the bottom side. So after this I decided to actually put a second nut on the top of the bottom board to always hold it in place. But after gluing those up, then we can pull them out of the clamps, because now I want to attach the main clamping surfaces to the beams. And so to do that, I need to put a screw through all the layers of plywood and into the 2x4 oak beams. So that means more drilling, more boring, more countersinking. And I just had to make sure that everything is lined up so that they go in. So we drive these in by hand using a hand screwdriver with 3-inch long screws. And
don't record that.
Luke, you were supposed to take that footage out of the video. Yeah, okay, yeah, get rid of that. We don't want to show people that I have a drill. Yes, see, I'm using a brace, and we're drilling these 3-inch holes all the way through the plywood and into the 2-inch oak. I don't use power drills at all. No. Here you can see I'm taking the bolt and clamping it to the bottom side, and what that does is it locks it down in place so that it doesn't spin at all. I did put a second bolt on here, thinking I might use that to spread the two pieces apart. But I don't end up using that because the friction on the threads actually holds the top plate up, so I don't have to have that second bolt to hold them up. And then on the top, we have another bolt that comes down and clamps it together. And there you go. There is the press. That is all to it. I'll be showing how it's actually going together when we do the plywood video, because I have a whole video coming up with plywood, but that's it. There's the press. Pretty simple.
So there you have it. Yes, I am happy with this. I'm really looking forward to putting it to use and making some plywood to make some clocks. Now, a couple features about this. There are all sorts of different veneer press styles, and I was originally just planning on a couple boards with clamps. But then I thought, let's use some threaded rod. The nice thing about threaded rod is it has a fine pitch on it, so you can actually put a lot of pressure into this and really, really crank it down. I have the nuts on here. The ones on the bottom hold this bottom jaw in place. The ones in between on top here actually will allow me to set this so that it lifts the two apart, and I can slide my pieces in, and then I can take these out and lock the whole thing down. So that's why there's a series of nuts on here that change the height and allow me to set it at a particular height and be able to get the plies in there. And if I want to, I can take it off and pull this whole top jaw off. So there, I am looking forward to using this. I'd love to hear your ideas. I was thinking about making plans for this, but then I decided there really isn't that much to make plans with. It's just 4 sheets of plywood, 2 foot by 1 foot, beams that stick over, and threaded rod that go through them. So yeah, if you'd like to see plans, let me know, but I think it's pretty straightforward. So I think that's about it for today. If you liked the video, please hit like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Think about becoming a patron on Patreon. All those things really do help out the channel and help us keep going and providing content like this. Thank you for that. So I think that's about it for today, and until next time, have a wonderful day. Wow, why is it that I always feel pressed into making a joke?